We are Rogue Media Sports.
Have you ever brought your magic to Walt Disney World like, hey, we came to play? Did you tip your tiara to a Creole princess or get goofy officially? Step up like a boss and save the day? Or see what life's like under the tree of life? Did you? If you could. Would you? When we come through, it's true magic. 'Cause we came to play. Bring the magic at Walt Disney World Resort.
You haven't heard about the McCrispy yet? Well, then, you probably haven't heard the sweet silence after the first crispy bite either. Go try it for yourself to hear the best nut sound you've ever heard.
It is the Doomsday Podcast in the aftermath of the Cowboys' 26-6 loss in Washington. And
you're laughing at the funeral.
Well, we'll talk a lot about Dak's performance and what it means moving forward. But it was kind of, and Ed, this was perfect for Twitter because I kind of had a lot of fun today at the expense of the Cowboys. But it was kind of like, if the Cowboys stop trying to win this game, how will we know? Was basically my thought. And it was remarkable in how bad they were. And Ed, before we get into the historical reacting to this Dak performance and the whole offense and everything, I got to say, I got the sense that I mean, and it seems crazy after going 12 wins, and of course they have a playoff game coming up. Who knows what will happen? But I did think, watching McCarthy and then watch him have to make that decision, he kept Dak and the first-team offense out there the whole game, desperately trying to find something against a team that had a quarterback making his first start ever, a fifth-round pick in Sam Howell, who came out of UNC, and it was like, I mean, the whole day was very embarrassing in a lot of ways, and I kind of wondered, Ed, if I was watching Mike McCarthy for the last time in a regular season game for the Cowboys.
Well, last year Mike McCarthy went into the end of the season against Philadelphia in a meaningless game and played everybody and, had this enormous 50-point win, and Dak had 5 touchdown passes and no picks against the Eagles. And he said he was doing it because he was trying to manufacture momentum and confidence going into the playoffs. And of course it didn't work because they lost in the first round. And he described his team as nervous after the game against San Francisco. So maybe he's trying the opposite now. Maybe he's trying to, hey, let's go play our worst game of the year, the worst game since the pandemic year, and see how we do when we go to Tampa and play a quarterback who's won 7 Super Bowls that we've never beaten in the history of the franchise. I've always pushed back against the idea that Mike McCarthy was going to get fired if he didn't win in the playoffs. But what happened today, if that's followed up by a terrible performance in the playoffs against the Bucs next week, who the Bucs aren't any good either. They're 8-9. They won their division, but they're 8-9. The Cowboys are a 12-win team. They're only favored by 3 points in the game at Tampa. So, yeah, I think suddenly there is reason to be concerned about what might happen if they go off the rails in Tampa in the first round of the playoffs. And I've always believed to this point, back-to-back 12-win seasons. You can't say, nothing is impossible with Jerry Jones because he 30 years ago fired a coach, Jimmy Johnson, who won back-to-back Super Bowls. So you can never just rule anything out. But to win 12 games in consecutive seasons, and it's been as long 30 years since that's been done. I felt like Jerry wouldn't want to go through the process of what's required of an owner now to hire a coach. You can't just go out and hire Sean Payton or just promote Dan Quinn if that's what he's going to do. And I didn't think, even though Sean Payton's available and he's arguably the greatest head coach they've ever had as a former assistant, I just didn't see Jerry paying the compensation that the Saints would require for Sean Payton. I didn't see him paying Sean Payton at the top of the coaching scale. He's never believed in paying big money to head coaches. But with this, I mean, how can you not think that's a possibility? To sort of a long-winded way of supporting your point, I guess.
Yeah.
I now do sort of step back from the possibility that Mike McCarthy might be done if he doesn't win in the playoffs all of a sudden. I didn't feel that way until today.
Yeah. In what by halftime was looking like a meaningless game was a game that the Cowboys kind of kept everybody in some sense. Ed, now that we know how it played out, I almost think they would have been better off shutting things down at 13-6, where it's like, we might have won, but no, they kept everybody out there and proved that there was no chance they had of winning, and they weren't going to come back.
And they, it's kind of like last year in that they weren't playing well on offense at the end of the season until the game we spoke about where, final week of the season, McCarthy used that to drub the Eagles and make everybody feel good going into the playoffs, and it failed miserably. But they haven't been playing well on really either side of the ball, but especially on offense. And that's where they've got to win the games. The defense, I think, has been better than it was last year, but they've got some issues that they're not going to resolve. Like, you think Tom Brady's not going to be testing whoever the right corner is in this game? Like, that guy's going to get the ball thrown at him 50 times on next Sunday or Monday whenever they play this game. So Tom Brady's going to be ready to exploit that weakness. And Tampa Bay already shut Dallas down in the season opener. They scored 3 points. That was the worst season opener they'd had in terms of offensive production since Jimmy Johnson, Troy Aikman, and Jerry's first game in the NFL in 1989. They scored 3 points. They scored none in the 1989 game. It was worse since then. But Tampa Bay's not a good team. They're not. They're so reliant on 45-year-old quarterback. It's ridiculous. He surpassed his own record today for most passing attempts and most completions in a season in the history of the NFL. Nobody's thrown as many balls in the NFL as Tom Brady did this year, and he's 45 years old. It's insane.
Well, to highlight your point, here's how bad Tampa has been this season. The Cowboys are favored by 3 in this game. All right. After watching that from the Cowboys, they are favored by 3 points in this game. All right. It is. We got a lot to react to. We're going to deal with the quarterback. We've been talking about it all season. It reared its ugly head in this game. Frito, please play the music. All right, Ed Werder, Matt Mosley, Frito Nation Productions. We're doing our thing in the aftermath of Cowboys' 26-6 loss to Washington. And, there was, at least the Giants kind of like tried. They got back in their game a little bit. They were trying on the road. I think the Cowboys tried, and they just couldn't function. And, Ed, we keep coming back to this. The quarterback, and even today on the broadcast, Burkhardt and Olsen on the Fox broadcast, they kept trying to provide the context of, hey, Dak's, he's been great. This has been a great season. But then, of course, he's got these interceptions. And, Ed, even I saw in the morning news an article this week about, it's 14 interceptions, and that does lead the league, but quarterback stats are unfair, and they're tip balls and they're drop balls, and it's really unfair because Dak's had a great year. And
let's redefine what an interception is,
because
Dak's had a lot of them.
Yes. And to me, that's a little bit out there, okay? I think we kind of understand at this point that not all interceptions are the same. Okay, we get that. But, Ed, at some point, and we've pointed it out this year, and I don't think anybody, if people want to say, Mosley and Werder are just haters, that's certainly not the case with Dak over the years. If you listen to our work for years and follow us, that's not who we are at all. But we do tell the truth, and now it's 15 interceptions, 3 pick sixes, and he finishes the year, and maybe, Ed, we can just treat this like a preseason game and go, well, they were being very vanilla. They weren't really trying stuff. I don't know what you can say, but Ed...
You're either trying to win the game or you're not.
You're not,
They went in trying to win the game.
They did, and they left the quarterback out the entire time, and no matter how much the head coach loves him, no matter how much the owner loves him, you go 14 for 37, and then you throw your third pick six of the year, and then Ed, 7 straight games with an interception. Hadn't been done since 2004. Vinny Testaverde. I loved Vinny, but Vinny was already old by then. That was a Parcells bringing him in, and he didn't want to start that year, but Quincy obviously got kicked out of the league, and so they were stuck with Vinny Testaverde, and that is what happened back in 2004. So on one hand, Ed, we got these people who want to point, well, Dak's been great. Don't look at these interceptions. But today, I think even the biggest Dak apologist has to say he was awful. And these are disturbing trends.
Well, and it's not just the interceptions. It's completing 37% of your passes, the worst of his career. The only 2 players who have ever had lower marks in terms of completion percentage were Babe Laufenberg and Tony Romo. I think that was before their broadcasting careers, but maybe not. But yeah, just horrendous. As for the interceptions, it's so uncharacteristic. Dak Prescott missed 5 games, and he's still tied for the league lead in interceptions with Davis Mills of the Texans, who were picking second in the draft. That's how bad they are. And it's 3 pick sixes since week 15. It's become almost a routine part of his game now. As you mentioned, 7 straight games with an interception. He'd never approached any of these numbers before. This is also uncharacteristic of him, and yet he seems at a loss. He keeps making the same comments after games, week after week, like, I recognize it's a problem. This can't continue. I have to fix it. I will fix it, but it's not getting fixed. Mm-mm. And to me, it was always at least partly a function of playing with a group of receivers who aren't as good as what he's had in the past. Why is he throwing so many balls into coverage to Noah Brown? Why is Noah Brown even playing? Where's T.Y. Hilton? T.Y. Hilton should be the number 2 receiver on this team right now. Michael Gallup's not what he was before the injury. CeeDee Lamb's had a really great year, but yeah, I think all of this is really troubling going into the playoffs because he just doesn't seem to understand what's happening and why he continually makes these mistakes week in and week out. It's just never been who he is. And I don't understand based on that, how can we expect him to fix it if he doesn't understand? I know he wants to be coached. And I'm sure he's being coached, but the problem is not getting any better, and they're to the point now where there are no more second chances.
No, and this thought that, well, he'll be fine, he'll shake it off. At this point, it's more than just kind of, this is an aberration. I guess if you want to call it an aberration, you would kind of call this season an aberration. But you can't really just say week to week because he's now doing this on almost a weekly basis, and it's gotten worse in previous weeks. And a lot of times, Ed, he overcomes it, and then we point to that. Oh, the guy's great at overcoming adversity. But it's like you can't just keep putting yourself in position to need to then go have like heroic type days to overcome some of this stuff. And like today against a bad team with a inexperienced quarterback, they weren't even close. They weren't even in the game.
You're playing an opponent that has absolutely nothing to play for. They've been eliminated. They're playing a rookie quarterback making his first start. This is the 3rd straight week the Cowboys have played a backup quarterback. And in 2 of those games, this game and the Tennessee game, Josh Dobbs, those players were making their very first starts of their NFL careers. And earlier a couple of weeks ago, it was Gardner Minshew making his first start of the season for Jalen Hurts. So they've had great fortune to be playing quarterbacks with no real experience in the past 3 games. And now they've got to transition to playing the greatest quarterback in the history of football, the winningest championship quarterback in the history of football. And what do they have coming back? Okay, they get Leighton Vander Esch back. They get Jonathan Hankins back. That doesn't solve anything from a pass defense point of view. And now, what are they going to do on offense? Their quarterback's throwing picks. He's had the worst completion percentage game of his career. They put on a 3-and-out clinic today up in Washington. Their run game's been bad for weeks. There's really nothing here that suggests the Cowboys are going to do anything of real consequence in this postseason. And I quite honestly didn't feel that way until these last couple of games.
And to Ed's point, and Stretch has a lot to say about Dak, and we're gonna break down some of those throws. But Ed, it's like a 7-yard hitch. One of the things is, like, these should be fairly simple throws for an NFL quarterback of Dak's caliber. The first one is dropped. Could have been a pick six. Ball hits the cornerback into hands, and he throws a bad ball. All right, they come back and they run a 5-yard like speed out. I mean, Bob, he makes the cut, and you've got to throw it toward the boundary. Obviously, Dak throws it behind the receiver, and you just see it all. It was almost just like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe this is happening again. He comes back on the very next throw. As I tweeted, Ed, it's almost like Dak's doing like a bit. It's almost like comedy or something, that you could do that and then go back to, and again, I thought to myself, well, on the play caller, should he eliminate these sort of outs or whatever? But the truth is, that's a fairly simple throw. You're throwing an out to an NFL wide receiver or a running back, and the guy just broke on it. And again, it wasn't like, oh man, he just didn't see him. His throw was errant. His throw was like 4 or 5 yards off target. I mean, it's so bad.
It's, I know last year when they were struggling on offense and there were concerns about the way Dak was playing, I talked to 2 Super Bowl winning quarterbacks, both of whom saw the same thing, which was he's a player at quarterback who's just not seeing the field well. And I wonder if that's happening again now. I also would suggest that his performance points to a quarterback who's just not very confident right now. And it's the wrong time for that. We all know that he's the unquestioned leader of that team. Not just offense, the whole team. He's the unquestioned leader of the whole team. And if the unquestioned leader of the whole team has lost his confidence because he's playing poorly and turning the football over and not seeing the field well, I think that's very troubling. I don't know how you overcome that quickly. I just thought, listen, and he's been honest about, he's kind of joked about the interception part of it. But today, I mean, he used a profanity to describe his own performance, and it was entirely accurate.
Mm-hmm.
It was the S word. But again, it's been weeks and weeks and weeks of the same thing, not the incompletions. He's always been an accurate passer, and he's always been a quarterback who protected the football, and he's neither of those things right now.
All right, and Jerry, after the loss, Ed is quoted saying, "We get to suck on that all week. And if that doesn't make you want to get ready to go in about 6 to 7 days, nothing else will." That was as thorough a butt kicking as we've had this year.
A common opponent, an opponent they know well, an opponent they've dominated in the Dak Prescott era, an opponent that had nothing to play for, an opponent that's starting a rookie quarterback making his very first NFL start, and Dak got outplayed by that guy. Listen, I thought this was a really troubling comment, and it was from Micah Parsons, who's just a second-year player. Micah Parsons, after the game today, said everybody should look at themselves in the mirror and say, what do I really want? What are we really doing this for? If people are doing this for stats, Pro Bowls, whatever it is, they might as well just hang it up right now. Like, I'm playing this for the long run. I'm not going to be young forever. I already realize that. I want to win while I've got this chance, this opportunity. I'm going to look at myself in the mirror. Everybody's got to look at themselves in the mirror and say, what do we really want out of this? Do we really want to go far? Because these types of performances just can't happen. So my question is, what would provoke Micah Parsons in a 12-win season to say that? What is going on that he suddenly seemed to be questioning the motivation of other people on the team? That he's saying, we need some introspection here. We need some commitment here. Why is he throwing it out there that there are guys doing this for their own stats, for Pro Bowls, and for whatever individual accomplishments exist, when that is not in any way should be the goal of this team?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And this is a young player, and this is the best player on the team. And saying that, and also I noticed Jaron Kearse told reporters after the game that this is embarrassing, is what he called it. And
but nobody has any answers. I mean, Mike McCarthy after the game says it's disappointing. The timing of it's definitely not what you're looking for, referencing going into the playoffs. But when you get kicked in the ass or punched in the mouth, you have a chance to respond. I have great confidence in our team that will respond. Do you? Do you really? Last year, you told us it was important to go into the playoffs feeling good about yourself, that you created the whole circumstance where that was possible, and still you lost. You were the only division winner to lose your first-round game at home, and you said the team was nervous. What are we to expect when they line up against Tampa Bay, a team that began their season with a pretty resounding victory over Dallas at home?
Yeah, it was as bad a way. I mean, obviously, if they had known this was going to be the performance, you would have been much better off just resting everybody and not putting that on tape. And now, right, as you suggested, it could be sort of a confidence thing for this quarterback, and for a guy that's been in the league now, 7 years or so. This is that can't be happening. It's unbelievable that he went out there and that was the performance, 14 of 37. And you make a good point. One of the things we admire about Dak is like his leadership traits, but when you perform like that, and even after the pick six, I can't even help but look at in the huddle. Ed, and you see him dapping everybody up and kind of getting them going again, and then of course you hear what he says afterwards, and you got to own up to it, but at some point you can't just say this isn't who I am. Okay, this is going to stop happening. I'm going to make this stop happening. Well, it hasn't stopped, and it's happened now 7 straight games, and this is starting to, like, if this continues and this is how the season ends, and again, we know how this works in the playoffs, he could have a good game, and if they lose, a lot of it's still going to come back, and there are going to be a lot of questions about the quarterback. And then, Ed, at some point, if this kind of thing continues, I mean, think about it. We question contracts sometimes with players that are great and players that are doing good things. On a player like this with an enormous contract for this team, I mean, he's gonna face so many questions. But again, they have a chance. They still are in the play. Doesn't it? It is kind of crazy. It almost feels like the thing's over and it hasn't even started yet. I mean, that's how bad today was. We might be.
Maybe we're overreacting to one game. They've only lost 4 times all year. But for all the reasons we talked about, the opponent, the circumstance of getting ready to go into the playoffs. I mean, this is the 14th time they've entered the playoffs with a loss in their final regular season game. And then when they've gone to the playoffs in that situation, they're 6-7, and they've lost 4 straight times. Then you look at how this franchise has done on the road in the postseason. They haven't won a road game in the playoffs since the 1993 NFC Championship game. They're 0-8 in playoff games on the road since then. They've lost 8 straight playoff games on the road, and this team that played that game on the road has got to go play the greatest quarterback in the history of football.
Yeah, Except for the one redeeming thing about that is he's not surrounded by the same people that when they won the Super Bowl. This has been a bad team, and they won a horrible division. So that's the one thing. I mean, when you stack up the seasons they've had, the Cowboys have had a much better season, and the Cowboys have beaten some good teams. But it is interesting where this season started.
They still have a great record against good teams.
Yeah,
but they also have this tendency, as we saw again today, and it was evident in the Jason Garrett. It's kind of the defining characteristic of the Jason Garrett era, that they play down to the level of competition. That's what they did today. Well, guess what? They're not playing a good team next week. So if they play down to the level of the competition next week, only that team seems to have a great quarterback. If they don't get pressure on the quarterback next week, if this pass rush doesn't come through, he's going to kill him in the air. And then if Dak compounds that issue by turning the ball over and giving him short fields or letting their defense score on a pick six, then forget it.
Oh, by the way, the punter drops a ball today and gives up a score there, and then they have a muffed punt, and so their special teams were awful today, and a missed extra point. So throw all that in, okay? And so and you might even use that as the silver lining part, is that one of the reasons they were down, of course, they should have been down by more, was because of the horrible special team start. So the whole thing got off to a rough start. I do want to thank our presenting sponsor, Marable Homes, family-owned custom home builder, building timeless classic homes in the Dallas area. Great team equipped to handle luxury residential new construction, passionate about what they do. So passionate, Ed, that down there at Cedar Creek Lake, some gorgeous homes going up in that area. Used to not be quite like that. When I was growing up down in that area, Kaufman County, on down to Maybank, 7 Points, Trinidad, Malakoff. Now they're building gorgeous homes around that lake, and who do you think's doing that? None other than Marable Homes, also over in Preston Hollow, over there where Jerry lives, by the way. I mean, they're just kind of putting them right up. In fact, I think Jerry could probably use a new structure.
I don't think you should be telling people where Jerry lives right now after that game.
Let's not I won't give his address out. Although some guys who are interviewing for Mike McCarthy's job, if it happens again, might need to know where that address is. Exactly. Marable Homes, MARABLE Homes.com, or at Twitter at Marable Homes. All right, Ed, we've got a little more. You and I need to set up the playoffs and set up the matchup with Tampa Bay. This is going to be an opportunity. And then you probably have some intel, being the fact that you work for ESPN and you're on TV all the time, and a certain ESPN owns a certain big property, and I'm hearing rumors that the Cowboys could be on that network. We'll talk about all of that. First, though, it is time for something we call Stretch Plays with Glenn Stretch Smith.
Stretch, this is, it's one thing to lose. I think it was an embarrassing performance by the Cowboys. But, of course, we started to realize as the game unfolded that the win or loss of it didn't matter that much. But the way they lost and the play of the quarterback continues to be hugely concerning. And, Stretch, before we break down, the individual plays, I just from an overview standpoint, I mean, this is really one of Dak's worst games of the season. And you've been calling this for a while now. I mean, it's just everybody will make the argument that, he'll be able to snap back in against Tampa Bay. But this was yet another huge concern. In this game, he was probably as bad as he's been all season.
I mean, Matt, I'd say as bad maybe as he's ever been. I'm seeing a quarterback. You look at the fourth snap of the game, offensive snap of the game, and he's got all kinds of time. But the time's going off in his head, his clock's going off in his head. He's not feeling the pressure. He's got happy feet, and boom, he just dumps the ball into the ground. In the ninth offensive snap of the game, you get the exact same thing, and he's got all kinds of time. He's got a pocket, but his clock goes off, and he feels like he needs to bail out. He bails out right into the rush, and he gets sacked. This is before he ever threw his interceptions. So to me, this is a guy who's in a funk. And don't make any mistake about it. I don't care what anybody says. He is in a funk. He is a golfer right now that is shanking the golf ball. And then I go to his interception. And I look at his first interception, and I make the golf analogy. You're out there with the instructor. You got your 6 iron, and you fire one dead right, and you just miss the interception. And he says, "Okay, hit it again." They run a 5-yard speed out. 5-yard speed out, I said. And he leaves the ball inside, shanks it again. I mean, it's a 5-yard speed out. This is not a difficult throw. It's a ball that has to be laid into the boundary. I'm telling you, the quarterback is in a funk. And I'm telling you, it's a funk. And he can say what he wants to, and I get all that. You gotta go to the podium as the leader of the team, and you gotta make some statements. But ultimately, this guy is really, really playing poorly, and he is feeling a lot of things that aren't there. Seeing ghosts, his feet are happy. I've said all year, I think he throws an okay ball into the seam. When the ball has to be pushed outside the numbers, we go back to a 5-yard out, and he leaves the ball inside. I got a 16-year-old son that'll tell you, you can never, if you miss, you must miss to the boundary. You cannot miss inside. And he misses inside. Now we're paying this guy $40 million, and am I aggravated? I mean, the thought that I just watched that for 3.5 hours just makes my ass itch, because it's really, really poor play, and it is poor. And I get it. They've got I'm not saying anything away from Washington. They got a damn good defensive line with Young and Payne and Sweat, and they can push. They can do some things with pass rush. That has nothing to do with ball placement. Absolutely nothing to do with the fact that he is missing balls, and I'm talking about all over the place. And so now it becomes a mental thing. And I'm convinced, nobody can tell me any different, it is a mental thing for him right now, because he is missing throws that average, let me stress again, very average quarterbacks can make. And I'm not talking about NFL quarterbacks. I'm talking about average quarterbacks can make some of the throws that he's missing. And that is very, very concerning to me. And I think that they've got to get figured out. And I'm talking about Kellen Moore. They've got to identify themselves to some things that I just don't think he can do. I'm not sure he's capable of doing on a consistent basis. And they've got to eliminate that. And if they can't eliminate that and start to get back to running the football, and I understand shuffling some pieces on the offensive line, but you ought to be able to run your feet and get off the ball and make 2 or 3 yards. And they were getting their ass stoned tonight. And so when you can't run the football and you got a quarterback who's wildly inaccurate and has zero confidence right now, I mean, that you're going to get what they had 11 3-and-outs, or it was 10 3-and-outs. You count the pick 3, or I'm sorry, the pick 6, and 9 of those 3-and-outs were on him. 3-and-outs. I mean, that is complete ineptness at its finest. And you combine that with the special teams who just decide to sleepwalk through it. F for the quarterback, F for the special teams, F for Bones Fossil. Start handing them out. F's.
Did you, Stretch, think at some point when it was going really poorly, I'm talking, like he was at one point, I looked up and he was like 13 of 33, had 20 incompletions, ended up with more than that. Did you feel like almost kind of like a pitcher or even, just get, hey, go get him, Skip. Like, you got this playoff game coming up. There's really nothing to be gained for. Did McCarthy You think McCarthy just didn't know what to do? Like, he was leaving him out there to see if he could get in some rhythm. But, like, in my mind, it became painfully obvious that he was not going to find any rhythm. What was that all about in terms of leaving him out there as long as he did?
Well, I mean, I think you're exactly right. I mean, they were trying to get him to where they could get him out of the game and feel decent about something that was being done. And they left him in. There was nothing to play for. I mean, Philadelphia had a lead, San Francisco in a big lead. There's nothing there. Yet they're trying to get their quarterback to where he doesn't have that bad taste in his mouth. And I'm sure you got Todd Williams standing down there, who's kind of Jerry's right hand, Steven's right hand guy. He's got an earpiece in. I'm sure Mike McCarthy was asking. Hell, he might have been asking the player programs guy, Brian Mosley. Hey, what do you think? I mean, I don't think any of them had any answer. I don't think they knew what to do. I think that, you know, you're looking around and you're trying to say, okay, how do we get this guy out of this? And it's so obvious he is in a funk. I mean, I don't think they knew what to do, Matt. And so they left him in hoping that they could get a couple things that they could point to. I mean, I'll tell you this. If I'm coaching the quarterbacks on that, but I'm not even going to look at that film. I'm talking about not on the plane ride home, not tomorrow. We're turning the page and going to Tampa. I wouldn't look at it for 5 seconds because it reeks and smells of something very bad. And I don't know that looking at it will get you any difference from a film learning perspective, from a coverage perspective, from what they were doing with the fronts and the stunts. The quarterback coach, they don't need to look at it at all. I mean, their player is in a funk, and they need to figure out a way to say, we're going to have to eliminate some of these throws that we're expecting him to make, because right now he can't make them. He just can't. And I'll go back to the golf analogy. I mean, if you're a caddy, I mean, and you're wanting your guy, it's 260, and you're wanting him to take a rip at it, you're going to hand him the 3-wood, or you're going to hand him the 6-iron and say, hey, lay this thing up. Hey, by the way, lay it up. I mean, and then he got to where he was trying to check the football down, and I mean, even those throws were errant. So at some point, boy, and again, this is a terrible time of the year to be going and saying, boy, our quarterback cannot throw it in the ocean, and he's standing on the beach. It's an issue.
Yeah, it's an enormous issue, and it's not. Yeah, from a play calling standpoint, by the way, you almost throw. I mean, you know, a pick six on the play before. I mean, and the guy just drops it. I think he's so shocked that he got hit right between the numbers. And then on the next play, I mean, if you see that, they came right back to it. And the guy, like you said, he shanks it, and the guy takes it to the house. Like, is that, I mean, in my mind, you almost now have to be calling plays, and you got to go away from anything that, I mean, I don't know. That, to me, that's got to, you were a coach, that's got to be an extremely difficult thing to know if you're calling these different route concepts or different plays that, oh, wait, I mean, he could throw a pick six at any minute.
It's yard speed out. We're not talking about a 17-14 comeback. We're not talking about an inside curl. We're talking about a 5-yard speed out. I mean, I'm telling you, I mean, it is one of those things that you just go, that is the most maddening scenario. It isn't like it's a difficult, 3-pump. It wasn't a sluggo. It was a 5-yard. I mean, it's something you throw day one of camp. It's something that you talk to the receiver about, throwing his outside hip so that you can run to the boundary, extending your hands, and we're going to lay this football out just like you've got a tray in your hands, and we're going to lay it out there, and we're going to get this 5-yard completion. 5-yard speed out. I'm telling you. It is a simpleton throw, and he leaves it so far inside after throwing that 7-yard hitch inside. He then leaves a 5-yard speed out inside, and you wonder why I say, "Oh, Stretch is swearing again, saying his ass is itching." Yeah, I am, because a 5-yard speed out and you can't throw it. Let me tell you, if I'm the offensive coordinator and you're questioning the fact that my quarterback can't throw a 5-yard speed out, I mean, it might be time for me to lay off 2 weeks and quit. It's maddening to think that that's how poor that throw was, and it comes off of the other throw that is put in day one of camp, a hitch.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. You're a Major League Baseball hitter, and I've tossed you 2 underhanded, and you have completely fanned. It's maddening.
Yeah, and to a team like Tampa that has somehow snuck into the playoffs and gets a home playoff game, I got to think they're licking their chops. I mean, how could they not be? How could you watch that and not be thinking we are catching this team at the right time? Now, Stretch, I wanted to spend most of the time, and we have, on Dak's performance, and you've been on this for weeks now, and again, a lot of people want to make excuses and say, well, a lot of these are tip balls, a lot of these, well, I mean, hey, 3 of them are pick sixes. All right. I mean, everybody wants to minimize it. Even the broadcasters today, we're trying to remind everybody, hey, he's had a great season and he's done some good things this season. But these are fatal flaws when you keep doing this time and time again. So again, I'm not trying to belabor the point, but that's just the facts. Now, on the other side, Stretch, there was some guys we weren't used to seeing in the secondary, but you did have an inexperienced rookie quarterback making his first ever start, and quite honestly, he kind of got comfortable. They should have been up by more. Their kicker was horrible, and then the kid threw a bad interception down there. But what did you make of – seemed like the D-line was holding up okay for much of the day, but, boy, the secondary had some issues.
Yeah, and again, they're trying to play some guys, and I understand that. You got Mullins in the game, and they're trying to see what he's got at the corner from Clemson. They got Coyle in the game at safety. They're trying to see if some guys can play, if they, in case they get in position where obviously, or get them some playing time. Get them some seat time in that race car. And I think, Mullins got ran by. He wasn't quite ready for the speed of the game, and that's understandable. Is it concerning? Yeah, but I still think those are things that the Cowboys will get worked out in their secondary. I thought the defensive tackles played really well. I mean, I thought the inside guys. I thought you saw Odighizuwa played his butt off. I mean, I thought you saw Dorrance Armstrong coming into his own and doing some great things. So, I mean, I think the defense overall, I like Bland inside. I think he is a better inside player, and I think they'll be fine there. I think linebackers wise, I think you got, I'm still a little concerned and missing Vander Esch playing the box run, but I think defensively you're okay, but I got news for you. I mean, we could cut this 15 different ways. If the quarterback, again, cannot throw the ball in the ocean standing on the beach, it's not gonna matter. It just isn't, and it is. I mean, I am beside myself, and you're right. I mean, I've talked about it. I've tried to point out what his flaws are and why is he doing some of the things he's doing, but boy, I want to tell you something. To be in the position to where he put that display of football out there week 17 of an NFL season, that is something that you got to question everything that you're doing with that young man.
All right, and Stretch, after watching that performance and after you get off TV tonight, what could you use, and what do you think most Cowboys fans could use, perhaps?
I mean, there's only one thing that would change the bad taste that this has in your mouth. There's only one thing that would change a bad attitude. Mosley, it's a Miller Lite.
Well, I think you're right. And that full-bodied taste, way different than most and pretty much all light beers. Miller Lite has been doing it for years. Guy named Troy Aikman that Stretch used to run around with quite a bit. Love that taste back in the day, and I think it could come in very handy. And it is something that before the next Cowboys game, people need to get things right, and they need to maybe have a taste of the Miller Lite. Stretch, I would just say tonight, as it gets a little chilly, it was a beautiful day, but around the campfire, that's where when you and I are breaking down. In fact, Stretch, would you like to do that maybe with me? Go have people invite us to their campfires, and then we just show up with Miller Lite and we visit with them and kind of break down the game. Do you think people would be excited about that?
I mean, I'd have no problem. I mean, I wouldn't invite you, but I wouldn't have a problem with that. No, and the next time you have a thought of wanting to go, I'd take your right pinky finger and reach up there to the top of that keyboard and hit the delete key, Mosley.
I think you want me there because I really need to MC the event, and I think we're going to have a big time around the campfire. To get Miller Lite delivered right to your door, visit MillerLite.com/Doomsday, DOOMSDAY, or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces. Stretch, that would allow the two of us to stay thin, healthy-looking, and vital-looking. Just two men that are over 6 foot and have their best years ahead of them. All right, Stretch, thank you. Thank you. Have a tremendous rest of your evening.
Sorry to bother you, Mosley.
There he goes. Glenn Stretch Smith with Stretch Plays.
All right, and that Stretch Plays, and Ed, as Ed was wrapping up all his activities on the road, I was talking to Stretch, and Ed, as you might imagine, F for the Bones Fossil, F for Dak, F for the offensive coaches. I mean, there were a lot of Fs to go around, but mainly on that offensive side of the ball, and it's very troubling that this is where the Cowboys are. Are we making too much of what ended up being a meaningless game? Maybe. I mean, if they go and perform extremely well and function well against Tampa, I think people can come on and go, hey, you guys overreacted, and we'll say, hey, maybe we did.
But this is the reason nobody trusts this team. What happened today and what happened last week and the week before that, that's why nobody trusts this team. You know, you lose to Green Bay, you lose a two touchdown lead in Green Bay, you lose a 17-point lead in Jacksonville, you lose to a quarterback making his first start for a team that has nothing to play for. Yeah, that's why you don't trust this team.
All right, Ed, and people trust the Doomsday Podcast. Obviously, the two of us, they place their trust in us. You see us during the games. One guy said, Ed, he's like, I don't. I mean, some people are like, I can't wait to hear Doomsday, and they think it's cathartic. And then some people who don't like to hate listen and all that kind of stuff was like, I don't think y'all need to do one this week. they were wanting us to maybe take the week off. I understand that. That thing can go both ways. And Cowboys and Tampa Bay going to get it on as we do this tonight. We'll start to kind of get some of the timing, the networks, where all these things are going to be. I was thinking perhaps this game could end up happening on a Monday. Can you give us any insight on how do you think this thing's going to break down?
Yeah, I think there is a sense that ESPN is going to get the Cowboys and Bucks on Monday Night Football. That's relatively historic. I mean, to get the most visible team in the NFL and the greatest quarterback who's ever played would be quite an acquisition for ESPN. And I think it would be two things. I think it would be an acknowledgement of the relationship that the president of ESPN, Jimmy Pitaro, has created with the NFL as a partner. It's reflective of the investment that ESPN has made in the booth with Troy Aikman and Joe Buck. It's certainly an acknowledgement of that. And I think people will be disappointed if ESPN doesn't get that game. And I think if you look at it, ESPN can certainly make the case that, they had a bad schedule of games throughout the season as it turned out and didn't have the flex option this year and will have a limited flex option next year. And then lost the best game we had, which was the Bengals and Bills last week, that was suspended and not resumed because of the Damar Hamlin injury, which was the right thing to do, but still cost ESPN a game, although you can certainly say a lot of people tuned in to see what was going on with that player's injury and his, nearly dying on the field as he did. But I do think there's a lot of belief around ESPN that we're going to get Tom Brady and Tampa Bay against the Cowboys. And, the Bucs are the fourth team to win their division with a losing record. 2020 Washington, 2014 Panthers, 2010 Seahawks. They're 8-9. It's the first time Tom Brady's had a losing season as a primary starting quarterback in the NFL, college, or high school. So if you're ever going to beat Tom Brady, and the Cowboys never have, this certainly seems like the best opportunity you're ever going to get. I mean, he finished the season averaging just under 7 yards per attempt, 4.9 yards per completion. Those are his lowest numbers since ESPN began tracking those stats in 2006. As I said before, he's completed 490 passes. That's the most in NFL history in a single season, breaking his own record from last year. So, like I said, the Bucs are totally reliant on their passing game, but that could be a bad thing for Dallas if they can't create pressure, because the corner opposite Trayvon Diggs, and they've had open tryouts for a month, they're still bringing in players. Now Xavier Rhodes is on the team and a candidate for the job. Somebody's got to cover Mike Evans, and somebody's got to cover Chris Godwin. Godwin just had 100 catches for the first time in his career this year. So I think the Cowboys are going to be challenged defensively in this game.
Is there any quarterback in the playoffs that the Cowboys do feel comfortable against? They don't really know.
Kirk Cousins.
Brock Purdy. Well, Cousins, yeah, you're right. They certainly feel good against him. Not against Aaron Rodgers. Not good history there. Not against Tom Brady. Ed, didn't they, your old friend, who you may be distancing from in recent years, Brett Favre, didn't the Cowboys fare pretty well against him over the years?
Yeah. They kept him out of a Super Bowl a couple times.
Yeah,
they did have good success against him.
Yeah,
but you're right, they didn't have it against Rodgers. They've had success against Daniel Jones. They've generally had success against Jalen Hurts, but didn't this year, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But we haven't seen both teams with their number one quarterbacks in a matchup, so that would be interesting. But
I do find it somewhat humorous, but also flabbergasting for Cowboys fans that, like, you would usually think of a 12-win team against, like you said, an 8-9 Bucs team, even having to go on the road. And the Cowboys are favored in this game, but you would kind of feel pretty good that you're at least going to get to that divisional round. And quite honestly, getting by Tom Brady and an 8-9 Bucs team in the aftermath of losing 26-6 to a team that didn't have anything to play for feels Herculean. Like, if you told me right now Cowboys are going to win this game, I'd be like shocked. I'd be shocked. Now maybe give it a few days and I'll feel a little differently about it. But the quarterback is in a bad place. There's only one wide receiver that you're just totally trust. You didn't really throw the tight ends today, and you couldn't run the ball. Okay, so there's nothing really great happening for you on offense, and you got major coverage issues on the back end because of the injuries, and you're running somebody named Mullins. I had to check my roster. I'm like, 37, this guy's getting beat a lot. Remind me who he is. Oh, yeah. Remind me 33, who's getting beat across the middle. I don't think that's Nate Jones anymore. No, that's Damon Clark. That's right. I mean, there's some people in key spots, and as you said, maybe Vander Esch. There might be some people about ready to come back that can help, but it's not
the
like
problem is the people who are coming back on defense are guys who play the run.
Yes,
and Tampa Bay doesn't run. As I said, their quarterback's thrown the most passes in the NFL for 2 years in a row at NFL record levels. So you don't have to worry about playing the run. You got to worry about playing pass defense. And in this case, I don't think the Cowboys can be trusted to cover, so they got to get to the quarterback. And he's hard to get to, vulnerable though he seems to be, because he can't really move. He manipulates the pocket exceptionally well, but he gets the ball out of his hand so fast with some of the stats I just referenced. The short throws coming at historic levels for him indicates that it's all run after the catch for them. You know, it's completing the ball and running after the catch.
After tonight's game, Ed, and hearing the line on the game, Cowboys by 3, and I don't generally give betting advice on here, but I would be telling people to bet the Bucks huge. Like, I just think, how in the world could you not just load up on the Bucks as a home underdog versus this Cowboys team? And again, this is all, we'll see. If the Cowboys, I found that interesting, Ed, as in closing tonight, to circle back to something you said earlier, that you sort of didn't sense that this whole belief, and I'm kind of with you on some of this, the folks that said, well, unless he gets the NFC title game, McCarthy's gone. I'm like, hold up. You got to look at some of the history of Jerry, and Jerry's always looking to, he hates admitting a mistake, and he hates paying somebody not to work. I mean, McCarthy has a couple of years left on his contract. Jerry hates that aspect. So I kind of agree with you. And to me, based on where this team's been the last 26 years, acting like NFC title game, that seems like a farce. And then you see today's game. But Ed, I don't. If they lose against to Tampa, and I think where you've kind of ended up after seeing how the season finished, how this quarterback's playing, and if the Cowboys go and lose this road game, this wild card game, it sounds like you're ready to say McCarthy's probably in trouble. You're not saying he's gone. You're just saying that he could be in major trouble.
Well, the reason is that, Jerry talked about last year, he put that team in the context of that was one of the greatest chances we've ever had, in my opinion, in 30 years to go win a Super Bowl. And like I said, they lost in the first round. They were the only division winner that didn't advance out of the wild card round. And so now he has that feeling again, because he said the same thing about this team. He could see this team going all the way. That's how he views this, the talent that's been amassed, what he's seen, the way he's seen them play in 12 wins. So he's thinking the same thing again. And if they lose their first playoff game to an 8-9 team, and then you're going to let Dan Quinn potentially leave for a head coaching job somewhere else. I don't know. I think it just throws open a lot of possibilities that I didn't think existed a month ago.
All right, Ed, lastly, I just wanted to, and I know we both think, it's been amazing. The Damar Hamlin, it was extremely scary. Everybody who was watching that, covering that, the players especially on the field, and to see him sitting up, pictures of him sitting up, watching his team play, tweeting. And again, he's still got a long way to go, but to even get to this point is nothing short of a miracle. And major kudos. A lot of times, Ed, you and I both value like the Cowboys medical staff, but the Bills, the Bengals, everybody involved in the first responders basically that were out there, but the athletic training staffs, and in particular the athletic trainer who did the life-saving technique to
CPR.
to bring Hamlin back to life, basically. It's an amazing thing. And so I thought it was neat to see all the response, and then today to see some of the T-shirts and clothes with a 3, and then, of course, Ed, to the way the noon game opened with the Bills bringing the opening kickoff all the way back for a touchdown was
the NFL is amazing. It's the most, forget script writers in Hollywood. Just what happens in the NFL the reality of the NFL is so much more amazing than anybody could imagine it to be. The most creative person could ever imagine it to be, for all the reasons you just talked about. Like this, first of all, we were all concerned that this guy was going to die on the field, and that hadn't happened since 1971. And instead, of grieving this loss and questioning the game, it unifies the country. Like, people who don't even care about football were captivated by this guy's fight for his life and ultimate success, and to see him there watching his team, and then for Buffalo to have the Patriots at home and return the opening first play since Damar Hamlin collapsed and nearly died. The very first play for the Buffalo Bills after that is a kickoff return for touchdown at home. Just the first time it's happened against a Bill Belichick team in 22 years. It's crazy good. Crazy good. But yeah. I think we're all just glad that it looks like Damar Hamlin is not only going to survive, but by large measure, based on everything we're hearing, it's going to be a really positive outcome, and he's going to go well past just surviving this incident.
Yeah, amazing stuff. And Ed, I'm always appreciative. People, and I think we try to tell them every once in a while, but your days, generally, by the time you get to the Doomsday Podcast, you've already put in a previous about 12 to 13 hours. And one of the reasons I like to think that you're so good at the end of like a 14 or 15-hour day with us is just because you're good at pacing yourself. And I like to imagine you kind of you slough off part of the day just so you could be great at the end.
I usually take a nap in the press box, but today I was actually on the field as a sideline reporter for the ESPN broadcast. So I worked throughout the entire day, and there was no nap. There was a nice omelet, but I paced myself. I turned down some TV stuff so I can make sure I'm sharp for the Doomsday Podcast.
Well, you were incredibly sharp, and again, have a tremendous meal in the hotel tonight, and put that on the Doomsday tab along with several other things. Ed, I appreciate it, and look forward to visiting with you after, who knows, could be a Monday night. And so very exciting stuff on the Doomsday Podcast. For Ed Werder, for Mark Friedman, and for Glenn Stretch Smith, I'm Matt Mosley. Good night from far north Dallas.
Reese's Peanut Butter Cups are the greatest, but let me play devil's advocate here. Let's see. So, no, that's a good thing. That's definitely not a problem. Reese's, you did it. You stumped this charming devil.
Walmart Plus members save on meeting up with friends. Save on having them over for dinner with free delivery with no hidden fees or markups. That's groceries, plus napkins, plus that vegetable chopper to make things a bit easier. Plus, members save on gas to go meet them in their neck of the woods. Plus, when you're ready for the ultimate sign of friendship, start a show together with your included Paramount Plus subscription. Walmart Plus members save on this plus so much more. Start a 30-day free trial at walmartplus.com. Paramount Plus Essential Plan only. Separate registration required. See Walmart Plus terms and conditions.